My name's Lena Whitaker. I'm a Director of Competitiveness at Eurocommerce. Eurocommerce is the association that represents retail and wholesale. We are composed of direct members, and we're also composed of the national associations, which you may be more familiar with on the national level. Who are the SMEs in retail and wholesale? They are 1 in 4 of all of EU SMEs, and that makes up 4.8 million enterprises and 20 million jobs. So today's session, it's a chance for us to sort of take stock. How are they doing, these SMEs? What is it that they look like? Why should we care about them? And I think actually what was a nice lead-in was definitely the introduction seminar yesterday in talking about who is that everyday entrepreneur. And I think if you can relate to any kind of entrepreneur, it might be your local shopkeeper. It might be somebody that you see selling in your local area. And certainly as well in the opening address today, the presence of retail and wholesalers across the entirety of the EU. And let's say maybe we can also tag on to the idea of the lifeline of localities. And I think that's one of the things that we often are trying to share at Eurocommerce, is that if you consider your local SME retailer or your local SME wholesaler, it's about that activity that comes around the store as well. And that's why we really should care about the vitality of these companies. We've been also trying to explain as well through our own campaign, Appreciate Wholesale. And I think many people don't really understand what wholesale is. But if you think about your daily life, what's happening behind the scenes? How is it that this table got here in terms of providing the venue? How was your orange juice that was provided to the venue to be able to then serve you? It all comes from wholesalers. Never really looked at because they're much happier to be behind the scenes, but actually things run smoothly. And they all do have this connection with the local community. And so I think that's why we wanted to run today this health check, to check what is the state of play, who are they, and actually is there more that we can do to help them. So I'm joined today by Elsa Groen, who is the Director General of Independent Retail Europe.
Good morning.
And we've got Christine Schreiber, Director of many different things inside of the Commission, but also what's important is also for the ecosystem of retail. And also Tim Lagerbusch, who's had his own practical experience as a developing sugar trends. So I'm going to just start, first of all, with Elsa. So what can you say about the SMEs? Who are they and how are they doing?
So, yes, so we are Independent Retail Europe. We represent independent retailers. And what are independent retailers? Well, they are retailers that have their own business. They are store-based for us. Most of them, of course, have now also an online presence. They're very much embedded in their own locality. And that makes them very important players in their community, as you just mentioned as well. In many communities, if it's a supermarket, they're the largest employer in their community. They cooperate directly with farmers, with local entrepreneurs, with local service providers, and therefore they create this whole economic hub in communities. They bring liveliness and livability of communities, and I think this is very often overlooked in policy making, the importance of retail for communities. And currently we have this sort of action going on where we say independent retail, the heart of the community, just to stress the importance of retailers for the community. And I think, unfortunately, this is also very much overlooked by consumers when they buy online or where they stand in line to buy Shane clothes in BVH. They do not realize what retailers actually contribute to their communities. And once it's gone, it's gone. And then people say, oh, this was actually really sad. And we didn't know they paid so much in taxes and contributed so much to the well-being of our own towns and cities. So quite a few of those independent retailers are organized in groups. So in my membership, I have large groups, some of the largest operators in the EU actually, that are cooperative groups of independent retailers. So they are owned by the retailers. Oh, sorry about that. Is that me? No. And so the retailers are the shareholders in the group, and they determine the strategy of the group. And the group allows them to joint purchasing, as well as some service provision, some marketing that they do together. But apart from that, they're fully independent retailers. They run their risk and they operate their risk. They own their store. They own their store just for themselves. And when they fail, they fail. So they decide themselves how they run their stores. So, and then apart from that, of course, you have franchises as well, which tend to be more top-down structure, because there is a franchise concept and that needs to be carried out. And you have both a very strict franchising, an example of a McDonald's or some other store where you have exactly the same things, exactly the same products, and you have to follow a certain layout for your store, and it needs to be all presented in the same way. And therefore, the franchisee doesn't have a lot of flexibility in how he runs his stores. Whereas you have also a soft rights franchising, which is a bit more in the middle and leaves more liberty to the business owner. And then apart from that, of course, you have the tiny, not always tiny, actually. You also have small stores or groups of stores that are family-owned, like most of the businesses of my membership are family-owned. And they just operate their stores in their own independent format, and they do the purchasing and all of that themselves directly from the manufacturers. So I think that's
it's a bit of a broad landscape.
A broad landscape, yeah.
And I think one thing that we can also say is, quite often it might be confusing. You might see a brand, but actually underneath that is that independent retailer, it's the franchisee, it's the SME.
Yeah, there's another big distinction as well. There's also quite a few retailers that are actually manufacturers. They make their own things and they sell that. And then, of course, you also have retailers that only sell branded products, and they're in quite a different position, because if you have a unique product, it's often quite easy to sort of conquer a market, because you have a unique product, as long as nobody copies it from you. And if you're just selling brands from other manufacturers, then you are in a different position, and you compete also with the manufacturers who often sell online directly.
So I think that's also an important part, is that there's a high level of competition. I think within brands, between brands, with the private label offering, and also with those that might be multi-assortment or really work with the brands. So I think it's certainly a wide landscape, but it also means there's a whole variety of issues that are being dealt with, whether it's from the digitalization, from the visibility already, compliance that may come from legislation, sustainability, and also I think what it was mentioned this morning, there's just the day-to-day. You're dealing with employees, you're putting the rubbish out, you're actually working on where do I need to go next. So I think the everyday entrepreneur is a tired entrepreneur, as was discussed, but very busy. And I think the key challenges, and this is maybe something else that you can complement if I miss something off the list, because I'm hopefully not too long a list. But really what's the difficulty is probably the buzzword of often this assembly is the regulatory burden. It's tough because there's so much that needs to be done. And I think what needs to also perhaps be understood also by policymakers, it's very difficult to get the feedback on actually how will this affect me, because sometimes people don't know unless it's concrete and they have to implement it. And I think there's a lot to be said about putting yourself in the shoes of the entrepreneur. Don't expect the feedback to a survey. It's more, okay, I'm presented with this. What do I need to do next? How will I build this into my system? Where do I go with this? Is it actually feasible? Do I have responsibility for these matters? And I think that's part of probably the way that we need to start looking a little bit more along with this idea of starting from the SME. Will this help my growth, as was discussed before? It's basically a little bit more practical. How do I actually get there? Because regulatory burden, I think, is really, really struggling, a big problem for many of the SMEs, and also large companies struggle. And if large companies are struggling and having to recruit somebody just for compliance, that means that there's less that needs to be done in terms of growth and development. So I think there's a lot of pressures that we also see. Competition is high, whether it comes from local players, larger players, online players that might be coming from third countries. And I think what we also really are looking for in terms of leveling the playing field as well is that it's an ask really that people should play by the rules. And that means that there should be strong enforcement. There needs to be a way also in the chances now we are seeing a lot more developments in terms of the looking at how actually do we tackle these non-compliant goods that are coming onto the market. And I think from Eurocommerce, what we see it as is that there is a whole range of laws out there, but there needs to be the enforcement, and there needs to be in a way to actually make sure those enforcement authorities talk to each other. Let's not invent new rules. Let's make sure that the teeth that we already have can actually have that effect. And I think the other things that also are still challenges that maybe will be on repeat for the next couple of SME assemblies, but hopefully with improvements, and congratulations of where the Commission has gone to help is digitalisation. And maybe, Tim, you can discuss a little bit your experience here later, access to finance, and actually bringing with new initiatives that may not necessarily touch on SMEs, the EU agenda for city and the right to stay, so that we really see that actually retail and wholesale should be part of these agendas and really helping you put there. So I think I've covered a lot, but I know, Elsa, that you've got a few more challenges that you'd like to share.
Yeah, particularly what you mentioned, this online, offline, unfair competition. We would go a bit further and say, well, certain things could be useful. For example, to give some responsibility to the platforms as well. In a supply chain, every operator has its own responsibility, and all those responsibilities, they're different, because otherwise, if there's an overlap, you don't know whether it was either one or the other that should have done this. So there's a different responsibility. And then come these platforms, and they're another actor. And so where can they fit in? And I think we can give them some responsibility. First of all, we should get the companies that sell to register in the EU, to register so they can be held accountable, to have their own authority within the EU, and that the platforms should check that they are there. There should be a list of these companies. They should check that they are there and that the numbers or whatever they use correspond. And actually, at the moment that there is nobody accountable for the products that were sold on a platform, the platform could have a responsibility there. They're, in the end, an economic actor. They're making money from selling products in the EU. And I cannot see why they should not have this sort of residual responsibility when, after they have checked and they should have ensured, or if they didn't do that well, that they cannot be held responsible for products that were sold online, passing through their platform. So this is actually closing a gap. And also in product legislation, we have stores that need to collect used electronic equipment. But when it comes in through platforms, and there's thousands, if not millions, of products that are sold through platforms into the EU of these electronic products, they don't have no responsibility for collecting them. They can just drop their thing up of the consumer and leave. Whereas all the stores have this extra burden of collecting this and making sure that it gets into the EPR system and gets recycled again. And also there we can give responsibility to the platforms and say, well, you also have to help make places available for consumers where this can be dropped up. We can also make the transporter responsible for taking back used fridges or other appliances, since other stores have to do this as well. Then I think I just have to look a bit. We're actually launching a paper today with all of these things that we're asking for from the Commission to fill those gaps and to make sure that consumers are safe in the EU and that we do not get this flood of non-compliance products in the market. Another thing would be also to control a bit how these very large platforms control the advertisement that is being done by these external platforms, because they have ways of advertising that nobody else is allowed to do. They can actually advertise products that they don't even have available. They don't sell them. It only just attracts consumers to their platform and consumers click on it. They don't sell that product, but they have the consumer on the platform. And this sort of thing would not be allowed for any European company, but these platforms, they can do that. So there's certainly a role there for these VLOPs, as they're called. They're very large online platforms to play, to ensure that there is a level playing field in that respect. And I think it could also maybe be useful for consumers to know that they're buying from a non-EU seller by having a label that is for non-EU sellers. It doesn't have to say it comes from China or whatever. No, just a label. This is from a non-EU seller. So you take a risk in a way that there will be nobody accountable when you buy this product. It also creates awareness with consumers if they want to buy European, that they actually can buy from a European seller. So this is another suggestion that we have in that field to sort of level the playing field between on and offline, which will make the marketplace a fairer place for our EU operators. Yeah.
Thank you, Elsa. I think it also maybe just highlights a little bit of what it is that retailers and wholesalers are actually having to do themselves. So if there's a whole series of non-compliance here, it's also a series of compliance for the people that are acting by the rules in Europe. And I think just to bring back, that is the regulatory burden that is sort of pervading this conference as well. And I think the Commission, we're very pleased to see that there are initiatives now looking at simplification and also other initiatives that normally we wouldn't necessarily be asking for legislation, but we also see the single market strategy identifying some barriers, including territorial supply constraints, which we also see would benefit SMEs. These are where the market is carved up, where large manufacturers are capable of asking for higher prices in certain countries. But this is actually a negotiation with those large manufacturers, which is done on behalf of the SMEs, which enables them also to be able to then offer those attractive prices in store on many of the brands that you expect to see there. So I think if I may now pass to you, Kristen, because I think there's a lot that has been said, a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities, but it's not like the Commission is sort of sitting back. You're doing quite a lot.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think you touched upon a number of, I mean, all issues very relevant for retail, but of course of a very different nature. So maybe let me start with, I would say the key focus we have had for many years, but which I think remains as important as ever. And this is helping really SMEs through this green and digital transition in general terms, but always bearing in mind that the retail SMEs are really key to the social fabric, also in urban and rural communities. I think this is something which we should not forget because the role is much bigger than just providing, I would say, the products people want. But I mean, we all know when we wander around inner cities, you know, and you can see the difference among a vibrant inner city and one where basically shops go out and then you have all these sort of this vicious circle starting with people not wanting to go there anymore. So I think this is a very important aspect which we have been pursuing, and I mean those who have been around for longer, you know, our Revitalize Retail initiative, which has been active since 2018, and where we do a lot of interaction with local actors as well. And we were actually very happy that the European Parliament picked this up in a way by basically launching this idea of the European Capital of Small Retail Award. You know, when the European Parliament basically decides on these kinds of projects, they're called pilot projects, then the Commission is actually obliged to implement them. We also get a little bit of financial support for it. And I have to say, this is really very interesting dynamic, which was created. To be clear, I mean, we have different categories because, of course, you cannot compare a large city to a small city. So we have small, medium, and large, and where basically cities could apply. I mean, what kind of measures they take for vibrant city centers. And this award will actually take place on the 28th of January in Brussels. So you're all very much invited to this. And we hope that this can give some interesting benchmarks also for others. And then let me also flag, and not least because I see Lucia in the room from the OECD, we have been working for quite some time on the green and digital transition in urban and rural areas with the OECD. For the first 2-year phase of this joint project is now sort of finished, and we will launch this report on the 14th of January in Brussels. And this is really, we have lots of good practices for national, regional and local authorities. And in the second phase of the project, we'll also have a policy toolkit, what works best. So we hope this will be something not only interesting and sound from an academic point of view, but also very operational and practical for policy makers at all levels. And then so this is, I would say, one big sphere of our action. And then let me come back to what you touched upon, Elsa, on the issue of when we talk about competitiveness, resilience of retail SMEs, we also have to talk, of course, about unfair competition, in particular in e-commerce. It's not to say that any e-commerce is unfair competition. And of course, for many SMEs, the e-commerce part is as we always say, the omni-channel is a very vital part of their activity. But we do have now increasingly new challenges from unfair competition. The latest, which everybody knows, is this, literally flooding of the EU by millions and millions of very often non-compliant or otherwise dangerous goods, which are ordered through platforms every day. And this has really a big impact, especially on small shops. Just as an example, among the many other things I'm responsible for is toys. 90% of non-compliant toys which we have in the EU come from non-EU countries and are ordered online. So this is a real issue. I'm not saying that among these 90%, every single toy is completely unsafe, but they are one way or the other non-compliant. And of course, we are stepping up enforcement measures, but it's impossible to control every single arrival, when you also can think about when you see what the priorities now for customs are in terms of drug trafficking, etc. Then of course comparatively a non-compliant textile product with chemicals which shouldn't be in there, or a toy which is non-compliant is sometimes second-rate priority compared to cocaine, drugs, drug precursors, whatever. So I think this is something we really need to tackle. We have started to look at the issue. One very important measure is that we will do away with this 150 euro limit for small parcels. This was actually a very good idea because it was supposed to be for private parcels. When you actually send a Christmas present and to your grandmother or the grandmother living in Australia, to the grandchildren living in Europe. But basically, it has been completely hijacked for commercial purposes, and that's why it will be gradually now abandoned. And we will also have a handling fee, so that should basically make fairer competition from that point of view. And of course, coupled with a revamping of the surveillance framework, which is important. So this is, I would say, one big chunk. You mentioned some measures we can already take for these very large platforms. I agree that, I would say from a common sense point of view, we would still like to be able to do more. You've followed the whole debate now on Shine with the opening of the physical store in Brussels, and then some of these. So it's. We are working on it. It's. I would say the DMA and DSA have certain possibilities, which, let's say, go so far. And so this is, I think, an overall assessment which also goes beyond the responsibilities which basically we have in our own Directorate General, where, and that's my next point, we have a strong responsibility for the single market. And actually, single market was also the conclusion of my previous panel here on biotech. So I think it's very, very important. And here we have two aspects. We have our simplification aspects, of course, which are crucial. And there you will have seen that, the first omnibus, which also is struggling, but I would say where we really, and I would like to stress, it's not about deregulating. I think we're still all committed on sustainability, but the omnibus on the sustainability reporting and the corporate sustainable due diligence directive has also created a lot of well-meant initially, but administrative burden, which do not actually really further sustainability, but which have, in many cases, just create lots of administrative problems, in particular for SMEs, which are caught in that whole chain. So there, the idea is to pause a moment and basically see that we can refocus on what is really essential in order to achieve our sustainability objectives. And we also adopted the single market strategy this year in May. And here, I think, we identified some terrible barriers which have been around for quite some time, and which we really have to tackle. And you already mentioned, some of the issues. On the one hand, we really want to step up the guidance from member states on the proportionality of retail restrictions. Because here again, when you look at restrictions on establishments, on daily operation of shops, you need some further guidance. Of course, you need some rules, but you also have to make sure that you put in place unnecessary barriers, which are not helpful for these rapidly developing retail market. And then, you hinted at that, the issue of territorial supply constraints. Again, quite a tricky issue, but these are basically practices of large manufacturers of branded products, which may fragment the market with a negative impact on the choice of products and prices for consumers across the EU. And that also concerns SMEs, of course, when they sell branded goods. And sometimes as parts of chains or franchises, or also as independent retailers. So this is something we are looking at. We're doing actually a proper impact assessment to see what would be the most effective measure to tackle these territorial supply constraints in order to have a sort of toolbox, see what can be done, because competition policy is very effective, but only if you are in a situation of competition policy, which is not always the case. And so these are a couple of, I would say, issues we are working on. Let me just, to conclude, re-mention our transition pathway for the retail sector, which has been around for quite a while. We have an active platform, so if ever you're not yet on that platform, please join it. We now have more or less 50 actions, which have been pledged by both public administrations, companies and other stakeholders, and this is something we intend to keep alive in order to make sure that we can still accompany this, I would say, transition, which is evolving constantly as well with new challenges. That COVID, but now with this increased competition from certain platforms, which was maybe not expected to that extent. At the time. So just a couple of points here. So to see that retail is still very high on our agenda.
Well, I think it's very reassuring to hear, even if it's dealing with problems that we wish didn't exist. But putting forward actually some proposals, I think we are very pleased to hear. But also, you mentioned the retail transition pathway, and I think this is something quite interesting because, Tim, you've got some experience a little bit more on the hands-on side. But it's not always an easy ride. And I don't know if you want to just explain a little bit about what your own experience is and how it's helped in terms of town centres and the visibility of those retailers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lena. So why am I here to speak is we had a mission, me and my co-founder, Christian. We started in 2014 to create a platform, a marketplace for local independent retail shops, like the nice little shops that you like when you go to the cities and you find the independent, vibrant little places, the pearls of the city that get kind of less and less when you travel. And our mission was to bring them into a network, into like it was Germany in the beginning, but then European-wide. The actual idea was also global, and it faced a couple of challenges. So this is our experience. We started in 2014 on that journey. We joined 700 stores into our network, onto our platform. And the super sad thing is that last year we ran out of investment and money. We were super close to be break even, but couldn't get any further. And then we sold the platform to another company. Now, when you go to our place, sugartrends.com, it's currently offline. The new owner, they want to put it up again, but takes some time to re-establish the technology. I want to share some learnings on how to create this initiative and what was challenges, what would be maybe easier if you start nowadays, because since 2014, the world developed. There's a lot more tools. So one piece was we spent a lot of money for developing the platform, the system itself, the marketplace. And this would be in nowadays tools much easier. With AI, developing tools would spend much less effort in developing the platform. Then this initiative of the small retailers, how was it to establish it or to get it. So it was actually easy to buy in local store owners into our idea and get them on board. The more difficult part was to get them really active, because the idea was not just to show, like it could be one way to show just the place and have like a directory where to go to or where to contact, but the idea of us was to create the marketplace for the products, for the unique and nice little design products in that stores. And it comes with all this problem of data management, getting good pictures, have the descriptions, bring it all in, have the stock maintenance. And if you don't have a completely digitalized system, what many of the little stores didn't have, then it's a lot of work. And that was one of the issues to really get it active and fill up all the products and have them all on board, especially when you go into fashion and then you have all the different colors and sizes. And if you don't have huge stock, then you have just limited pieces. And then it's a big decision if you take the time to maintain the data in that place. Another issue was our idea. Everyone liked our idea, also the store owners, but the willingness to pay for it was super limited. So there's one piece of being visible. We wanted to increase the visibility. The one thing is for making online orders so that the products got shipped. The other one was also to just make it visible and bring people to the stores or into contact. And so it would actually fit a base fee, or we would have needed for our model a base fee. And we noticed that many of the local store owners, if the local newspaper came and said, I want to sell you an ad, they were easily spending 500 euros on it. Charging 20 euros per month for our platform was really a big hurdle. Like they all expected much, much bigger numbers, click numbers. So it's one issue I would say is still active to overcome. And then also the thing of wrapping products, getting it shipped. So there's coming a lot more service providers and tools into it to make it easier, also for local shipping with local deliveries. And that would actually nowadays make some things easier, but it was certain hurdles. In terms of the general aspect of local retail in the cities, it is kind of much broader angle that you need the mix of cafes, of restaurants, of playgrounds for the kids, of infrastructure, of a nice environment. Mm-hmm. And the thing is also in our nowadays world where we have some kind of this supply of products, where you're seeing society getting more and more into experiences and events, and not so less products, or kind of there's a tendency for reusing or secondary market, taking products much longer. So that means there's kind of less products being bought by our society. And it's one aspect that we noticed, that this is kind of the community itself in that city. If it's really interconnected, that helps. So kind of the city can help with making events, local events easier, with doing city marketing, attracting people there. So it's kind of this mix. And then like it all comes, also our activity, there was a lot of soul and passion in it. And this is what you also see in a retail. So if you open, there's still some guys opening new retail shops, and it's a lot about their special niche, mm-hmm. about the USP, and about that certain, you cannot just come and sell any product. It needs to have a fine-tuned concept that consumers like and people like and are attracted to, and it comes with the kind of passion and soul in it. And when this joins then in a city and collaborates, then it resonates and it's getting something bigger. In terms of initiatives and platforms, I think sharing knowledge helps a lot. What we saw is that retailers are not really engaged in the Chamber of Commerces or in the associations, like the independent guys. And what we noticed was that sharing success and also sharing failures helped them a lot. So there was certain use cases in our platform where one fashion boutique in Bremen, she was only the one doing it, and she tripled her sales just because she was daily talking to us and challenged her own ideas and getting inspiration every day. And one thing was also sharing knowledge about IP. So she just put own product names sometimes into the marketplace, and had then an issue with IP protection of other companies. The lawyers coming in and saying this name is secured. And this is like this broad topic of regulation, of things, of hurdles that some shop owners could share knowledge and save costs in there. Like as you mentioned before, to have some resource in there that is from a shared base, and it's also across, and then shipping across Europe. Still for the single market, that you have the regional shipping much cheaper than across Europe. Even like you ship from Cologne to Netherlands, it costs double the money than shipping from Cologne to Munich. It's also one hurdle in that kind of commerce and shipping goods currently still. So I have a lot of more to share. So it was a long journey. Super sad that we stopped it. And maybe we get into a new angle and supporting it again. There's still a lot of passion in there. And yes, but it's kind of hurdles for the small retailers, but it's such nice pearls to keep them living, and it's good for the society.
Thank you. I think certainly this ecosystem, and as you've also explained, there's so many different elements, knowledge sharing, also realizing that retail and wholesale as a sector, it's consumer, customer driven.
Yeah.
You need to be putting something out there that people want to experience. We've got maybe just time for one question before I will sum up, because I know this fits in your coffee break, which will give you a little bit of time. So I don't know if anyone has a burning question. Okay, I've got 3 questions. Let's see how we can round them together. But I start with Naomi, and then
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Naomi. I work for MKB Nederland. I'm working a lot with Patricia, who unfortunately couldn't be here today in the panel. I have a question for Christine. Maybe just a little bit about us. We represent SMEs from the Netherlands, a lot of different types of SMEs, franchise, non-franchise, food, non-food. Most of the retail sector is who are SMEs. And we've been working a lot in the past 10 years on the single market. Now we are very happy that the Commission has proposed earlier this year the single market strategy. We're very hopeful about this strategy. We're also seeing that there is a roadmap coming early next year. And I think this is great. It has some great proposals in there to challenge the barriers that are there right now for the retail sector. But I have a question, maybe some tips from you, Christine, about how we can also motivate, in our case, the Dutch government to really also do something with these ideas in the council, because now we see a lot of different ideas coming up, and I feel that especially in the competitiveness council, it's a bit difficult sometimes to prioritize on those issues. I was wondering if you can share any insights on tips as to how we could go about that.
Do you want to collect the question?
I have 1.5 minutes. So what I may suggest is if there is a quick question that I can take from the others that put their hands up, and then we can maybe just see if we can either address them before or after the time is up.
Margaret Rüttke from the German Confederation of Crafts and Small Businesses. And my question is to you, Christine Schreiber, but I'm actually asking this question as a consumer, because I was appalled when I really heard the numbers of how many parcels get to Europe from Tim on Chain. And I thought, actually consumers should be held to responsibility as well. Because in Europe, consumers have a lot of rights. But when you think how many millions of parcels arrive, I was actually shocked. And my question is the handling fee. I don't know if I have the numbers correct. I think at €2. Do you really think this is enough? And shouldn't we have a much higher tax for kind of showing what we want to have, what kind of value-based system we want to have in Europe? And just one remark, I tested the shop of Sugar Trends because we know each other from a couple of SME assemblies. I thought it was a brilliant idea. I wanted to buy a product. It would cost me 3 times the postal fee than the product I actually wanted to order. And so I didn't order, although the product was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think we are out of time, so maybe just for, I don't know if the recording is going to end, but I would suggest that if you have a couple more minutes, we also answer these questions.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we can just conclude if the end is coming a little, and then we go to the questions. But I think this has really showed that it's a different area. I have to finish, unfortunately. So I may have to suggest that some of these questions are taken up. I can see quite a lot of member state representatives in the room. So if there is chance to talk, then I would suggest that. And I think also that we have to be careful of unintended consequences, but Christian might be able to share with you afterwards. But I think really, let's prioritise retail and wholesale. This was about the health check. This was also about trying to make sure that there is proportionate legislation and manageable and enforceability. So let's try and also take stock in the future on the health, and let's see if we can work together. And I apologise to those that asked the questions, and hopefully Christian will be able to take them later. Thank you.
Right.